Okay, here we go. So how this works is that, as I mentioned before, in this process, so remember, this has been now 12 years for us. So 12 years is a lot of time. Generally, at 10 years, you reach a certain level of mastery. We just call it a tenure, okay? So 10 years, you're going to hit some level of mastery as long as you stay in whatever you're doing. And so for 10 years, we've been cracking metaphysics. And in this process, if we were to define we would be probably in the best position to define what the word meta means. So to make it very clear, the word meta is very interesting because it's actually, it's almost superfluous. This word meta, some say it means death, but others say it actually means the goal or the end. So you can see how that actually all says the same thing, because to some, they perceive that death is the end. And for others, they perceive that death is inevitable and somewhat of a goal. And so you have a certain amount of time then to actually figure this puzzle out. And that amount of time is your own personal orbit. So when we say meta is a word that we use to begin to break down or give a definition clearly of whatever is being referred to. And that's why there is always a different a word added to meta. So let's take the word metadata. What that means is basically more data, or data that is going to explain the data. When we use the word metaphysics, we're saying a form of physics that's going to explain the physics. It's to break it down finally even further to the last thing so that everybody gets it. So this big transition, if you may, of the word meta being invoked into the reality, because it's being done by a unified construct that is a corp. It is a body. It is an eidolon. We will take a moment for that, just to realize that this creation of a corporation is indeed mystical. The company that creates these corporations that you see in your face every single day and brands that you grew up on is actually called Pentagram at pentagram.com. Check it for yourself. And in that process, since they are master occultists, then they are able to take the entire procedure from consecration of the logo or the logos, and then the embedding of the logos with the energetics of what is needed to form a corp, and then to breathe life into it as an entity. So when the filing of all of the paper and the oaths and the pacts and the contracts are done, then this entity is able to arise and first create a building or a skeleton, and then fill it with people and life, put a penthouse or a pineal gland on the top, and then put its roots in the basement and as its files, and then again fill it with people that are working and using their energy to power something massive, all united into this cause of this corporation. And so when these sigils sit on the altar and they begin to work the electromagnetic magic, they send it down these symbols and these logos, and then those that are around it, in it, or wearing it begin to receive the vibration or the resonance from it. So this is just a word to the wise that everything around you is indeed a stage at times. It's not exactly what you're looking at. That's why we don't pay attention to the GUI. We don't pay attention to the framework that is overlaying the code. We look at the code, and the code tells us everything. The code cannot be conflicted. It is the only truth, because if it's not used, then the entire construct or the illusion breaks down. So we then have the definition of meta, meaning that it's actually more of like a grand crescendo. It's like if someone said that they were working on the plan, it's like the completion of a plan. So Facebook announcing Meta is basically saying our plan is complete. But what is that plan? And so we always go first to what we call, especially since we have this powerful tool, the metaphysical data set. The metaphysical data set. The metaphysical data set was an idea that I had of creating a spiritual AI. In this case, AI being a very proficient search system. A system that is able to scan data and information using the algorithms and using the integers that you plug into it. So in my world, I see these technologies, which are actually very old, as being useful for crunching data and actually connecting stories, especially spiritual stories that took place in different places and times in order to corroborate what really happened through the linguistic structure. So the metaphysical data set at this stage consists of approximately 12 to 13 key books, that mainly linguistic books that focus on etymology, that when I query, bring back very interestingly accurate data about whatever I query. And so when I get creative with a keyword, I type this keyword in and it begins to bring data back to me. And almost like it's living itself, I'm able to connect that data into exactly what is going on in the reality and what is happening in relation to that word. So now we have to examine very briefly what the metaphysical data set says about the word meta, and when it's evoked in the metaphysical data set, what is around it or it's corresponding to. And amazingly enough, the data set tells us exactly what Facebook is doing and what we already know Facebook has been doing, but it confirms it through the linguistic system. But it also lets us all know that, hey, this is the truth, and it's about to get a bit more stranger. And not being aware of this, especially for those that are going to continue to immerse into certain realities, it's going to just draw them in. And since they never had a line to let them know, hey, you're in a dream, they're going to go all in and actually become tied into an entirely different network that is going to dictate how they function. Okay, so we're actually looking at, with the launch of Meta, the birth of the Matrix. And if you look real closely, movies such as Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio and many other movies or video games, even such as Cyberpunk, Blade Runner, many of these movies actually have all of the same people, all in the same group, all projecting this specific idea of what the future they want to live in should look like and what it should consist of.